Good evening, everyone. We'll get started. Hopefully I'll be able to admit people as we go along. Can someone just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me correctly? Thank you. Terrific. Okay, so as I had on the welcome screen, we're going to talk about 4 different things. It shouldn't take too long. It's more to give you a bit of an update of what the process is for this year. There's been a few changes that have come from Catholic Schools New South Wales. So just really want to go through that process so everyone is aware of what's going on. So as far as the changes are concerned, the insurance, we only received that on the Thursday before Easter. So we thought we were ready to go. But as of yesterday, there were some more changes to a couple of the forms. So we've been guaranteed that no more changes will happen after the end of this week. So over the holidays, I'll just tweak those last couple of things. So we'll be ready to go at the start of next term. Another couple of changes that have happened with Catholic Schools New South Wales. In the past, they've never approved any work experience involving horses. That's now changed in that, well, it's sort of changed, in that students will now be able to do work experience at stables. They won't be able to ride horses, but they will be able to do work that involves the caring for horses and training of horses and things like that. So that's a positive change. One of the negative changes is that we can no longer approve any work experience that involves sport. So I'm not entirely sure why that's come about. I assume there's been a claim of some description, which is very disappointing because in the past we've often had students do work experience with, say, Netball New South Wales as a development officer and things like that. So just keep in mind that that won't be available. So that's pretty much the changes from Catholic Schools New South Wales. And why do work experience? So at Kildare and at most schools, work experience is certainly not compulsory. However, we certainly do encourage it for the majority of students. So it's particularly important for any students that are looking at finishing up school at the end of year 10 to go into a trade pathway, for example, for a number of reasons, to check that the trade that they think they want to do is what they're anticipating and to get some experience in that field. We also know from experience and have lots of data on this from our school that by far the majority of apprenticeships come off the back of work experience. So it's something that we certainly strongly encourage for any students that are looking at finishing up at the end of year 10. We also encourage it for students that are thinking that they might already have a potential career in mind and they want to just have a bit of a try before you buy. And so we certainly encourage that. We also encourage it particularly for students that don't have a part-time job, just so that they get experience of working in the real world. However, the majority of our students do have part-time jobs, so that's not so relevant anymore. But yes, we certainly encourage it. There are many good things that come from work experience. Even if you do work experience and it turns out that you don't enjoy that particular job, that's not a wasted experience. So it's good that you've tried it and you've decided that it's not what you thought it was, and then you can move on to trying something different. One thing this is related to work experience, but it's more related to subject selection. Lots of people think that they need to have decided what job they think they want to do when they finish school when they're in year 10 so that they can choose the correct subjects. That's not true for a lot of different reasons. Number one, you will potentially change your mind 5,000 different times between now and the end of year 12 if you choose to go on to year 12. So choosing your subjects based on a career that you think you might like to do has its dangers. The second thing is you should always be choosing your subjects based on the things that you are good at and you enjoy. And so sometimes students will say to me, but I want to do such and such a career, and for that university course, excuse me, there's a prerequisite of doing advanced maths, for example. And I say to them, well, if you're good at maths and you enjoy maths, you would have chosen that anyway. And they said, oh, but I'm not good at maths. Well, you've chosen the wrong university course if you're looking at doing a course that requires advanced maths as a prerequisite. So this whole idea that they need to do work experience to confirm that that particular job is the job they'd like to try when they leave school, it's in relation to subject selection, it's not relevant. Again, we certainly encourage it, but don't only do work experience because you want to choose the right subjects for subject selection for year 11 and year 12. When can you do it? So we, along with most schools in New South Wales now, we don't have a block program. So block programs are the traditional way. Lots of the parents on here potentially did that when they were at school, when all of year 10 went out at the same time. Now, we don't do work experience that way for a number of reasons. One being there's a lot of assumptions with that. One being that we're assuming that all students are ready at the same time to do work experience, and not all students are. So that's one reason why we don't do it that way. Another reason is I might have 10 kids, for example, that are particularly interested in one local organisation. If we did it at a block time, then 9 kids would be really disappointed. Whereas if we spread it out throughout the year, then potentially most of those kids may get an opportunity. So that's why we do it this way. We also do it this way so that it suits the employer. So there are certain times of the year where it's not appropriate for a business to have a work experience student. They either may be too busy to supervise you fully, or they may not be busy enough to give you a good experience. So it's really working in with the employer about the best time that suits them. We're also open to lots of different types of work experience as far as timing is concerned. So traditionally, students tend to do a 5-day block, but you don't have to do 5 days. You might choose an organisation that is happy to have you, but not necessarily for 5 days. It's fine to go and do 2 days. That's fine. We're very flexible. Often students will do a 5-day block and really enjoy it and are looking at finishing at the end of year 10 and transitioning into an apprenticeship. Then there may then be the opportunity after that 5-day block to do some ongoing work experience of 1 day a week with that particular organisation. So we're very flexible. We work in with the employer and the student. So yeah, the only thing as far as timing goes is with the paperwork, I need the paperwork, and I'll go through this in a bit more detail in a minute, at least 2 weeks before the placement. So you need to keep that in the back of your mind as well. And there's also some other little restrictions as far as if you're, say, for example, you're doing work experience and you won't be staying at home at that time. So that doesn't include boarders. So if boarders are staying at the boarding house and doing work experience, then they don't have to fill out the extra forms. But say, for example, you were going to Sydney to do some work experience, then there's additional forms that need to be filled out. And I need those 4 weeks in advance because I have to send those to Catholic Schools New South Wales for approval. So there are some limitations on times. So you need to keep that in mind. In the past, we've said that students that are looking at finishing up at the end of year 10, we will pretty much on the boss of it. So I can approve whatever I think is best for the student. So for students that are looking at transitioning to apprenticeships, then I might approve 4 or 5 different work experiences over the course of the year, because we know that will increase their chances of getting an apprenticeship. Students that are looking to continue into year 11 and year 12, traditionally we would only approve 1 week of work experience during school time. However, in the past, you've been able to do work experience during the holidays. One of the new rules changes with Catholic Schools New South Wales is that year 10 students aren't allowed to do work experience in the holidays, except under exceptional circumstances. So I'm pretty sure that I would be able to find a reason why it's an exceptional circumstance if that's what you want to do. So it's just a matter of keeping me in the loop and making sure that you're having a chat to me about that. As far as the process goes, I'm going to share my screen and I'm quickly just going to show you our process. So, in the second week of the holidays, this will all be uploaded into your classroom. So this is the pre-placement pack and it has every step listed in quite a bit of detail. So at the start of the year, actually, this first step's already been put in your classroom. So there was a link to the My Work Experience website. It's compulsory for you to do the online course. It only takes 15 to 20 minutes to do it. And you need to do that and include the certificate in your paperwork later on. So even if you are at that stage where you haven't quite decided exactly what you'd like to do, but you know you would like to do something, then get on and get that done ASAP, because that will speed up the process. So as far as organising the placement is concerned, all of these things are hyperlinked. So there's an introduction to work experience. So that's a separate document that I've compiled that gives you a little bit more information, and there's space in there for you to jot down a few ideas and maybe a few contacts and those sorts of things. The workplace learning guide for parents and carers will also be uploaded to your classroom, and it's essential that you make sure that you've passed that on. The next step is deciding on what types of jobs you might like to try, and then finding contact details for the employers. And then from there, you need to contact the employer. So I cannot stress this enough, how important it is that you do that and not your parents. I get feedback from employers constantly about this, that they want the student to make the call. Now, we understand that that can be really difficult and a bit confronting for students if they're not particularly confident. And I'm here to support you with that. So as an example, there's a link there I've got a bit of a script that you can use as a basis. I often have students come and have an appointment with me and we have a bit of a pretend run. Sometimes parents will go through that with their sons and daughters to help them through that process. It's actually not that hard. It sounds harder than it is. So, you're contacting the employer to see if they do work experience, and if they do, if it would be possible for you to do a placement, and if so, when would suit the employer, etc. Once you've sort of organised that sort of side of it, you then need to come and get a pre-placement pack. And this is where the paperwork part comes into it. So you need to actually book an appointment to come and see me to come and get a pre-placement pack. In the past, they've been available without making an appointment with me, but we're changing the process a little bit. But you don't necessarily have to make an appointment to see me to get the pack, but to return the pack, I definitely need an appointment. So in the pack, there's a couple of different things. So there's the student placement record. So that's a 4-page document that has the student details and the student signature, the school details. It has the employer's details, and then they have to fill out quite a comprehensive sheet about what you'll be doing on the job. And then they have to sign that, parents' details, and parents have to sign it. And then mine is the last signature. So that's the student placement record. You can see here how the vehicle travel with host employer is highlighted, because last week they said that form was separate, and the change that happened yesterday, they're trying to now merge that into the student placement record. So I'll wait till the end of this week to see what happens with that. And there's also a workplace learning guide for the employers in that pack, and you're required to give that to the employer. So once that's done, you need to book an appointment to see me to return the pre-placement pack. So in the pre-placement pack, you need to tick these things off. So this cover sheet, the student placement record, which is what we've just spoken about. And it's really important, I can't stress this enough, how important it is that everything is filled in. The only missing signature should be mine. So if anything isn't filled in, I will literally send you an email and say, come and collect it again and fill it out. Because being able to follow directions and fill out the forms properly is showing me that you're ready for the workplace. So if you can't get that right, I'll literally email you and tell you to come and get it and fix it up. If your work experience is going to require you to be living away from home during your placement, then you need to just send me a quick email saying that you're going to be staying somewhere else, and then I will send you the appropriate forms. And like I said, I need that 4 weeks beforehand. If your placement involves working with animals or in the mining industry or in an abattoir, then again, you need to email me, because that's another special approval that needs to happen. And again, I need that 4 weeks beforehand. Also in the pre-placement pack is the workplace placement visit report. This is really important, this bit. It sounds like trivial, but it's important. So it's just making sure you're following directions. The only thing you need to do on that, up in the top corner, you need to write your name and the host employer. And you need to do that in section 1 and section 2 as well. And then that's all you need to do. The rest of it I do, but you need to make sure you've done that. And again, if that's not done, you'll get that email. You will also need to include a copy of your work experience certificate that you did that online course. So you need to print that off and put that in the pack. If you do more than one placement, you only have to provide that to me once, because I'll then have that on file. And if you need a white card for your work experience, so just to remind people about that, any work experience that is involved in the construction industry, you will need a white card. And it's not just builders. So for example, if you want to be an electrician, plumber, if you are going to be on a work site, then you need a white card. Even sometimes cabinet makers will require you to have a white card. And the reason behind that is that although you don't need it for the factory, so where they're actually doing the cabinet making work, if they are taking you to a site to install the cabinetry, then you definitely need it. So it's really important that you check with the employer if you need a white card. And then once I've got that, I then enter all those details into our portal. And then from there, both you and your parents will get an email confirming the work experience, and it will appear in your Compass. And do not assume, even if you drop off forms and I'm not there, or even if you've handed forms to me, don't assume it's approved until those things happen. I've had cases before where students on a Friday afternoon have dropped off a form, and I've been in an all-day meeting off-site, and then they've rocked up to work experience on Monday. That's not on. Because there's no insurance. So you need to have that confirmation from me. You'll also be required to then pick up a placement pack, which will have your work experience diary in it and a work experience evaluation sheet. And then you just need to check with me if there's any other requirements. I will tell you that when we have that meeting, when you drop off your forms. And then once that's all organised, obviously a week before the placement, it's important that you ring the employer to confirm that everything's ready to go. Sometimes you'll have organised a placement several weeks in advance. So it's apart from checking that everything's still right to go, it's just common courtesy to give them a call. And then after the placement, you'll be required to email a thank you to the employer, and you'll be required to CC me in on that so that I know that that's been done. And you also need to come and see me and tell me how it went. And that's really important for lots of reasons, because first of all, I want to know that you had a good experience. But I also want to know if you had a bad experience, because it may be that it just wasn't suitable for you, which is fine, but it may be that that's an employer that we should potentially avoid in the future. So, and if you don't tell me those things, I don't know those things. So, and I've had cases like that before where, you know, an employer who I thought was a great employer and every interaction I had with them was great. And then it wasn't till several weeks after a placement that a student in a different conversation mentioned something that they had seen at that workplace. And so I don't send students there anymore. But if that student hadn't have told me, then I wouldn't know those things. So it's really important that you pass on any of that feedback to me. And you'll be issued a work experience certificate once I get your work experience diary and your evaluation sheet back. And just one other thing, it's really important, if ever you come to my office to drop something off to me and I'm not there, on my door there's a hook and there's a little sign that says drop off zone. Always hang it on there. There's plastic slips that you can put things in and you just hang it on that hook. It's really important you do that. Don't put it on my desk. Don't put it under a door. Don't put it on the bookcase outside. It's likely to get lost if it's done that way. Because, you know, if it gets, sometimes cleaners, for example, will pick things up off the floor and put them somewhere thinking they're doing the right thing, but it's not where I would typically look and I miss things. So you just hang it on the door and you know it will get to me that way. So pretty much that's it as far as what the process is. I'm more than happy to take questions from anyone, and I'll maybe wait for 2 minutes for questions. Feel free to jump out now if you don't have any questions. And then if it's a question that you don't feel comfortable speaking in front of everyone else, I'll say in a minute or two, you know, if there's no questions that everyone needs the answer to, I'll ask everyone else to leave unless you've got a specific question. Hopefully you found that useful. My pleasure. Feel free to leave whenever you want. And you're all muted, by the way.
Just Jen, working in health, like at Wagga Base for a placement in allied health, something like that.
Okay, so Wagga Base are doing an allied health work experience program this year, which they haven't done for a few years. So applications, so that was put in the classrooms of year 10, year 11 and year 12. And those applications have been sent off, and but they don't actually close until Friday, I think. But any applications I've received, I forward those straight away because I was hoping, I think they'll do it in an equitable way and give a certain number of places to each school. But just on the off chance that it was first in, first served, I sent them off straight away. So any that I've received have gone. Nursing and allied, anything at the base and Calvary are really tricky for a number of reasons. So Wagga Base don't do nursing work experience anymore. They used to, but when I say they used to, we used to get 2 spots per year, okay? And so that's changed. They're not doing it anymore. And I understand why to a certain extent, in that, you know, we've got CSU here, so we've got nursing students at CSU that are taking placement spots. We also have the TAFE. So people who are doing diploma of nursing and assistant in nursing, they're all doing placements. So, but what we have instead is it used to be called Be Like a Nurse, but this year the name changed to Health Heroes. And so we've got the Health Heroes happening. So and we've got 4 girls already been accepted into that program for this year. And there may be another one later in the year. So again, any information like that, any opportunities like that, I put in the classroom. So it's really important that students are checking the classroom on a regular basis to make sure that they're not missing anything like that. The The other thing I'd say about nursing and allied health, though, is that particularly with allied health, there's lots of private practices that you can do that.
Mhm.
But with nursing, the smaller, so if you have somewhere, say, for example, you had family in, I don't know, Gundagai, for example, those smaller hospitals, rather than the base and Calvary, they are much more likely to take students for nursing work experience. So I've got a student, for example, who's going to do it at Coolman, at the health service there, because she really wants to do nursing but can't do it in Wagga. So if you've got someone, and sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know as well. So if you do have a contact, then feel free to try and use that contact. But the general rule for the base and Calvary is that they will say no.
Mhm. Yep.
There's no other questions. I'll stay on till the last person leaves. I think that might be the best option. And if you're all sort of hanging around waiting for everyone else to leave, then maybe you might want to send me an email or something instead. Okay, so Georgie, I assume you mean Wagga Wagga City Council? Yeah. Okay. So they definitely do take work experience. However, I was at a meeting on Thursday, and one of the very popular ones that we've used a lot in the past, the Botanic Gardens, like the zoo there, and also the animal shelter. Although in theory they're taking work experience students, they now need to have QFE the shots. So that is becoming problematic as well. So what I definitely encourage sending me an email saying what you're interested in at Wagga City Council, and just send me that email. I'll chase it up for you and let you know. But yes, they do it as a rule. Wagga Council definitely take work experience students. No other questions? Terrific. For those latecomers, the recording will be available. I will upload it to the classroom